What is Agent Ignite? Get educated on current and forecasted market trends and valuable insight on real estate related topics from accredited experts, giving you a competitive edge in the industry. Sign up for the next Agent Ignite session at theruthteam.com/events.
This is your daily real estate syndication show, and I'm your host, Whitney Sewell. Today is a highlight show that's packed with value from different guests around a specific topic. Don't forget to like and subscribe, but also go to lifebridgecapital.com where you can sign up to start investing in real estate today. I hope you enjoy the show. Our guest is Kyle Mitchell. Thanks for being on the show, Kyle.
Thanks for having me, Whitney.
Give us a little bit of the timeline of like quitting your job and into your first deal, and then let's jump into that first deal.
Yeah. So let's see, December 2017 is when we first found multifamily syndication and just started learning about it and going to seminars and meetups and all the like. And I would say in April of the next year, 2018, we started our own meetup and, started building our investor base and started visiting, picking markets, things like that. And then in November of that year, it got to the point where we felt like our investor base was strong enough. We had chosen our markets. We had built our teams out there. Our network was large enough. So I left my job before we even closed on a property because I just felt like we were close. And for me, when I go into something, I'm just the type that goes all in. So I had the support of my fiance, which was number one. And she said, let's do it. So we literally started a podcast the next month and made an offer. Got it under contract basically at the end of June or January. Negotiations and everything took a couple months, and then we just closed on it a couple weeks ago back in May. Okay. Wow. So I know a lot of people are in that stage of, when can I quit my job? Everybody's wanting to do that, right? And so congratulations to you though, and on Thank
this
you.
first deal as well. But let's talk about that first deal. How did you find that property?
Yeah, you can say it was luck, but basically my fiance and I on her day off and my day off during the week would drive to Tucson, Arizona. And that drive's about 7.5 hours long. And the reason why we do that is, number one, there's not a direct flight until the afternoon. So the timing of it just never worked with flying, and we would have to stay overnight. So we would wake up at 2, leave at 2:30. In the morning, get there around 9 or 10, and we would meet with brokers, meet with other investors, local people, tour properties, and then come back and get home at like 1 or 2 the next morning. So on one of those trips, we let the brokers know we're going to be out there. So I got a call from one of the brokers and said, hey, I literally just got the keys to this place. I haven't walked the units even myself. Would you want to walk it with me? So we were the first ones to tour the property. We got about a 3-week head start until it went to market. And by the time it went to market, we had already done all of our underwriting, our due diligence, and felt really comfortable with it. So day one, we put an offer in and were able to lock it up pretty quickly.
Nice. So did the coaching program that you had, did that supply all the confidence to be able to go through that deal and complete all that?
I would say that coaching program helped us out tremendously. But nothing prepares you for what you go through on your first syndication without going through it.
Couldn't agree more. Yeah, couldn't agree more. And but yes, it does give you some confidence just to have somebody to talk to or ask some questions, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you need a network, you need a team. Real estate's a team sport, and we can't do without that team. And even going forward now, we're trying to build even stronger teams, stronger relationships, because the stronger those are, the better you're going to do in this industry.
Of course. And, I appreciate you sharing about just the drive and your all's dedication. And most people aren't going to be willing to put that kind of time in and that kind of effort. And I'm glad it's paid off. And it does. You just got to be consistent, and you got to be willing to keep going, right? I mean, you got to be willing to keep doing it. I'm sure that was not easy on your all's day off to keep doing that and driving that far, but you're willing to do that to make it happen.
Yeah, it's like that book, 3 Feet from Gold, is what I kept telling myself, right? Is if don't give up when you're right there and just keep doing it. And, we continue to do it. Now we fly sometimes and stay overnight because this is my full-time job. So I have the availability to do that. But even last week, we drove to Phoenix to look at some properties as well. So you've always just got to keep grinding and keep doing it. And if you keep doing those things, like you said, consistently, you're going to break through.
Our guest is Brian Briscoe. Thanks for being on the show, Brian.
Hey, thanks, Whitney. Appreciate you having me on.
What about, getting to that first deal? And we all know, like listeners who have their first deal done, the second deal happens faster, and you already have some systems in place. You have a so much greater understanding than you did, just probably 2 months before, especially 6 months before. But, getting to that first syndication, getting that across the finish line, what are a couple things that you contribute to getting there? The coaching, the partnership, maybe, part of all that. But, help us understand some of the key things that the listener needs to have in place that helped you to get to that.
Obviously an understanding of how all the pieces fall, come into the process. And, my coach gave me this elaborate spreadsheet of, A to Z, here's how you close. But there were a lot of times in there where it just took, a whole lot of effort. And I think one thing that was key to me is I have a very defined date in mind where, I have very specific financial goals. I mean, I want to retire on October 31st, 2021, and that date was, regardless of whether I've officially applied for it or not, which I haven't yet, but that date was set in stone, 2 years ago. So, I mean, yeah, we got the template, the do A, then B, then C, which simplified things enormously. But at the end of the day, I'd look at that date on the calendar every morning and say, we need to get this done. We need to get this across the finish line. And every day, I'd look at what are the next couple of things I need to do to make this happen. So really, yeah, it was a combination of the mentorship. It was a combination of the partners who are all, hustling and doing their part, and just the coordination between it. But end of the day, it was that big why that I have.
Love that. Yeah, you gotta have a place that you're headed to, right? Or see a vision of where you're wanting to go. Otherwise, if you don't have the map, and how are you going to know which direction to turn, right?
Right.
So it definitely speeds up the process as well. Having a coach, having a mentor, I could not agree more. It helps you to not make as many mistakes, right? That sets you back. But give us some details about that deal and maybe, what your role was in making that deal happen.
So it was a 55 unit in Spartanburg, South Carolina, very old building. It's about an 80-year-old building, which I know a lot of people shy away from. But, my role in that is, so I mean, if you rewind, when that came under contract, it was still just me working for me. I had an agreement with Eric Shirley, who's one of my partners now, that we would partner with that one. So at the time, I was actually quite selfish with that deal. So I didn't want it to be taken away from me or anything like that. So I basically did 80% of the work on that one, for purely selfish reasons. And it wasn't until 2 months into that where I realized that I could trust my partners. I liked them and I could trust them, and gotten to know them very well, where I really started opening back up. So my portion, I was the one that negotiated the contract, and then I'd reach back to my partners and say, hey, this is what we're doing. Are you guys all okay with that? I was the one calling the lender. I was the one getting the insurance lined up, talking with the broker. So I did about 90% of the work that needed to be done. And, I just asked them, hey, just make sure the capital's there, make sure the capital's there. And, I brought in a couple of investors and they brought in the lion's share of the investors. But, now the way we do business is completely different. We're much more of a team than we were first time getting across the finish line. I mean, that really started out as a bunch of individuals. And, after the 4 months that we were under contract was over, we were a team, so that was kind of our first taste of how things worked.
So, maybe you can elaborate on that a little bit. That's another such a common question about partnerships, right? And in different roles, or how do you do that? Because it's difficult figuring that out in the beginning. You got to have some tough conversations as well, right? And just be very upfront. And so, how did you all say, if you can elaborate on the structure of your partnership, or how maybe it even changed, after you did the first deal, you talked about you do things differently now. And so what changed, and maybe a little bit on the structure if you can.
Well, what we did is we looked at everybody's strengths and also availability. And because of my I'd like to call it a 9-to-5 job, but I'm at work long before 9. Because of the lack of flexibility my schedule gave me, we basically looked at what our strengths were. And Eric ended up saying, hey, I want to be our acquisitions guy. Eric's very strong at underwriting. He's got a lot of very technical mindset. He also had a lot of time, and his day job has him traveling all across the Carolinas. So it naturally fit for him to be able to, talk with the brokers. He'd get in the car and he'd have to drive, 2 or 3 hours. He'd just call one broker after another one. So, that was a perfect fit for him. And up front, I started doing the asset management because, I knew the property, the first property that we had under contract, I knew it extremely well, so it was just natural for me to do the asset management. And, Brian and Todd, between them were doing, all of the investor relations. They're managing the portals, the websites, everything else. And that's how we started. But we've gradually, kind of shifted duties again to where, Todd and Brian are actually doing most of the asset management. Eric is still doing the acquisitions. And, because my schedule at work changed, I'm doing most of the content, the outreach, which includes the podcast that we're about to launch. So it's really been a dynamic situation. And when something changes, we come to the table very quickly and say, hey, look, this is working. This isn't working. We need to make some adjustments.
Is there a specific way you all communicate, or a frequency, or a method, anything like that that's been useful or productive?
At a minimum, it's once a week over Zoom, and that's the minimum. But I'm calling them very frequently. We have a text string. It's not something that besides the weekly call, we're still working on the internal systems. Every time we have a call with either a lender or a property manager, we're taking notes. And we've got a Google Drive account where we're sharing all that. We have a couple of Google Docs up on each property where every conversation we have is documented on there. So any one of us, if we weren't available for the call, any one of us can go to that document and just scroll down and say, okay, this is what was done, this is what was said, this is what was agreed to. So that's one thing. We've got an investor portal. We use AppFolio for that, which also has a CRM in it. Same thing with investors. I think one thing that's worked well for us with investors is kind of a handover. So if I meet somebody who's interested, eventually, I'll talk to them 1 or 2 or sometimes 3 times, but eventually I'll hand them off to, Todd or Eric, who will also talk with them. And our goal is to get them comfortable with the whole team. Not just me or not just Eric, but get them comfortable with the whole team. So like I said, once I'm done talking with somebody and they're interested in investing, line up with a call with Eric and then Todd, and then push them over to Brian Mallon for onboarding into the investor portal. So, every investor who comes in talks to, at least three of the 4 Oaks.
Thank you for being a loyal listener of the show. Please subscribe and share it with your friends. We want to help you become the passive investor you've always wanted to become, but also the operator you've always wanted to become. We want to be the #1 resource for your real estate investing journey. But go to lifebridgecapital.com where you can start investing in real estate today.